Welcome to today's ComAI lecture series with Taina Bucher with a lecture on tech transitions, presenting AI, slowing down the future. My name is Christian Katzenbach. I'm one of the professors at CEMTG, also involved in the ComAI research unit. We are hosting this lecture series for quite some time now. So it's organized by the CEMTG as a research center at the University of Bremen and the research unit Communicative AI that has been starting this year, doing a lot of work in this space of communication and generative AI. So we're very happy and honored to have you here today, Taina. Taina Bucher is a professor at the Department of Media and Communication at the University of Oslo. I was thinking about it, and I think I know Taina and at least her work for over a decade now, starting probably from the 2012 article, Want to be on the Top, Algorithmic Power and the Threat of Invisibility on Facebook, which was for me kind of one of the earliest and best, and in a way kind of trajectory developing articles on these questions of algorithms, social order, and the role of social media. And I was really happy and a bit jealous to read it back then. It was good to see that. And in the meantime, she's become one of the mostly read and cited scholars on algorithms and their role in society over the past decade, for example, with the 2018 book, If Then, Algorithmic Power and Politics with Oxford University Press. And then also specifically for us, the 2019 article, The Algorithmic Imaginary, Exploring the Ordinary Effects of Facebook Algorithms, which is specifically for our work on imaginaries and the role of discourses about AI, very important. And then she also, of course, worked a lot with critical research on social media platforms that also was condensated into the 2021 book, Facebook, with Polity Press. So her work on the relationships and entanglements between algorithms, social and political concerns, examining how users experience and make sense of algorithmic power and politics is resonating a lot, I believe, with our research, but also our teaching here in Bremen. So I'm also very happy to see many of our digital media and society and media and public engagement students here. And for me personally, it's really inspiring to see your work, because I think you're one of the few scholars who successfully connect the perspective of users with more organizational and structural questions of social, economic, and political orders. So that's why we're very happy to have you. More recently, you also have built up a humanities center for the reimagination of AI, humane, I believe, to pronounce it, which is a new research activity at the Faculty of Humanities at the University of Oslo. So Taina, we're very happy to have you, and the floor is yours for your lecture.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. Guten Abend. Ich bin aus der Schweiz, kann auch in Deutsch reden, but I'll spare you for my Swiss German and give the talk in English. This is also me testing some new ideas, some new material, and it's quite theoretical, so bear with me. So it's not based on recent empirics. It's really about suggesting some of the things that I think are missing when we're talking about AI imaginaries or futures of AI. I really look forward to the question session afterwards. Okay. And if any of you can't see me or you want me to talk louder, I think that I have a mic somewhere. And I have some speaker notes here. That's why I'm cornered here. But just feel free to ask me to move a little bit if you think I'm too I'm too hiding behind the desk. All right, so I want to tell a little different story about AI. Well, I'm not sure if it's a very different story, but at least that's what I'm suggesting. Not one where everything becomes smarter and faster and frictionless or more productive, as we're very often told in or by the industry. But one where I think we should and could celebrate imperfections, awkwardness, and different kinds of silences in the very human experiences that we have. So as a provocation against an obsession with AI futures, what we might call futuring AI, I suggest we need to fixate AI more also in the present, which is what I'm attempting with this idea of presenting AI. And so what I want to ask is also, when AI promises to save us time and eliminate friction, what human experiences do we risk losing? And more urgently, perhaps, are we ready to say goodbye to those experiences, or do we need to tend to these endings with more care? And so to think this through, the kinds of experiences that we risk losing, I also briefly want to set up where I'm coming from theoretically, but also since I'm based in Bremen and have just read Andreas Hepp's newest article, or I don't know if it's the newest one, because there you are. Where he argues that media and communication research needs to shift from studying the consequences of AI, what's already happened, to studying its emergence, how it's being imagined, promised, and built right now. So if emergence is performative, so if talking AI into being shapes what it becomes, then we must also ask, whose temporalities are we performing? So this seamless, optimized Silicon Valley promises, or those promises by Silicon Valley, are not inevitable. It's a specific temporal politics that encodes certain values while rendering other kinds invisible. So let's imagine a day in the not so distant future. So you wake up, your inbox is sorted, your email answered instantly, meetings are auto-scheduled, your calendar perfectly balanced. Everything is really smooth. No waiting, no glitches, no awkward moments, no thinking. This is kind of course, this is an exaggerated world that we're promised by big tech, where friction is eliminated and our lives are perfectly optimized for maximum productivity. These kinds of exaggerated promises are not merely marketing hypes, but they are very much marketing hypes. These are very much discursive formations that are backed by institutional power. So there are many examples of how AI is being imagined and sold and marketed to us as primarily something that saves time, that makes us more productive. So the UK government announced an NHS trial delivering unprecedented time and cost savings. There was a study, though I'm not sure if it's actually rebunked, but where MIT found workers using AI completed tasks 40% faster. OpenAI also has a new feature where you can interrupt ChatGPT if you think it's taking too long time to deliver your queries and your answers as an attempt to actually save time. That's how it's also marketed. The EU AI Act is also about framing productivity through trust, making AI safer to scale, also about saving time. And at least in the Norwegian context, and as I'm told by others also, there's this sense of urgency about starting to implement AI in public services. So we have a minister for digitalization whose plan and policy was for the entire public sector in Norway to implement something or AI something in at least 80% of the entire sector. But it didn't really matter where and how, and we didn't really have the conversation, that type of conversation. Is it a good idea? What for? All of those things. But this was also very much about the fear of falling behind and facing sort of negative business effects if you don't jump on board as everyone else is doing. And I think this idea of urgency, of productivity and cost savings and time savings is very much systemic across the board. And I'm told that you study policy documents and tech announcements and different kinds of imaginaries by AI stakeholders. And one of the things that really goes across the board is framing AI as sort of the solution against wasted time or unproductive time or unwanted time, whatever that means. So this also leads me to a question that I'm really interested in. So what gets lost when the world runs too smoothly? And so in order to engage with this question of what we're losing or what we risk losing in all of this, I set up, or this semester I've been teaching critical AI studies at the University of Oslo. And I asked my students, which human experiences, skills and practices do you think we're risking in maybe a near future of more AI? What are you afraid that's disappearing? And one of the things that they did was making these posters where they engaged with the question of endings, narrating sort of the near distant future, but also how they, the differences between what's to come and where we're at right now. And so one of the groups, they, as you can see, or maybe you cannot see, but basically they're narrating a typical day in a similar manner as to what I started this talk with. So, and this was very much how most of the groups were thinking about or imagining what AI does to their everyday lives. So this is from one of the groups. The everyday life we imagine is very comfortable and streamlined, where AI makes daily choices for us. It chooses our clothes, it schedules our time, and it provides weekly menus with corresponding shopping lists. But when we leave this to AI instead of making these choices ourselves, we risk losing creativity, serendipity, and the ability to make decisions on our own. This makes life very predictable and low effort. You always eat the right thing instead of trying new recipes. Travel the most efficient route and always wear the correct clothes for the weather. With an AI that plans everything, we have a life, but are we really living? Another group added something that I found really interesting, this idea that the problem isn't just losing the past or the present, it's losing the space of possibility where new experiences could have emerged. So again, maybe a way of thinking about emergence rather than consequences. So what are we foreclosing when we're imagining AI or when we buy into certain kinds of imaginaries? So productivity enhancing technologies and their imaginaries, of course, have a long history centered on promises of saving time. This is nothing new or unique to discourses about AI. This is very much how the history of technology goes hand in hand with technologies that are meant to make labor more efficient. But also in the history of media, saving time and human effort is very much built into technologies and how we're talking about different kinds of media. Before the printing press, books were copied by hand. That was more cumbersome. The spinning jenny reduced production time. Telephones saved us from writing letters, and so on. But what really happens to all of this time saved? Or all of this time that is supposedly already saved? And what do we hope to do with all that new time that AI is now promising to free up for us? But also, what kind of time even needs freeing up? So we have a few different ways of contextualizing this time-saving technologies. One of the most useful, for me at least, comes from the history or from feminist histories of technology, especially domestic technology, where Ruth Schwartz Cohen and her seminal work, More Work from Mother, really argued that new household appliances such as the washing machine, vacuum cleaner, and so on did not really free up time or alleviate women from work in their homes. So these appliances just created new standards for cleanliness that demanded even more work, right? So it wasn't that the introduction of domestic technologies really freed up or saved or liberated the people that they were supposed to help. So when I also ask my students, so what do you plan to do with all the time that you envision will be freed up by AI that tells you what to do or plans your entire day of activities? Most actually couldn't answer, which I found really, really interesting. Not so much that they couldn't answer, but that the question of hope or, imagining an actual alternative for that time was so alien in a way that you can critique and you can envision and you can buy into the discourses of AI and imagine and talk about this saving of time. But it's very apparently, I don't know, maybe you're different. But apparently in my classrooms, they were really, really pressed on the question of what they're actually hoping to do with that time, right? So even though there is this promise of same time, it doesn't really, that's not the same thing as knowing what time is for. And I think this question of like, what do we do with time, or what do we imagine doing with time if we have the time? I think this is also very beautifully captured by this art piece called Universal Basic Income by an American artist, Josh Klein. So he has a video installation. This is a video installation. And this piece is basically like a political ad for time, or a political ad for universal basic income. And it's very much like it really buys into the sort of the commercialized and contemporary campaign aesthetics of these political ads. And in the video, people speak. It's only 2 minutes long, but it's not on YouTube, so I cannot show you the actual video. People speak directly to the camera about what they can or wish or want to spend their time on if this economic policy of the universal basic income were to become a reality. So writing novels, curing diseases, spending time with family. And the tagline is, of course, that's also a nice one, I think. Universal basic income, it's about time. And these are some stills from the video, which is really, as I said, about making an ad for time. And he's very often read as being, ironic, satirical, that it's just about the parody of the genre. But he thinks about this as a very earnest piece of thinking about the hopes and dreams that people actually have, and what it means to allow yourself to dream. When the world, or to dream for and about a world that doesn't assume productivity as its core mandate. So I'm going to walk you through a few theoretical frameworks that I find, or that help me thinking about how we can think differently about AI imaginaries, how we may fixate those imaginaries or human experiences in the now, in the present, how the present, to me at least, is more important than the future. So a first kind of methodological move would be to try to reactivate stories. And here I draw on Ariella Azoulai's concept of potential history, where she argues that progress is not merely an idea, but a destructive force, a movement, a condition, as she writes, that demands we constantly detach from what must be made past, devalued and destroyed in the hopes of what is expected to come in the future. So the AI efficiency imaginary that I just outlined operates exactly in this way, relegating slowness, hesitation, and incompleteness to obsolescence in service of a frictionless tomorrow. But for Azoulay, she would insist that we don't need more grandiose motions forward, that this drive to add even more stories is precisely also a very sort of imperialist move, and that we might instead need to slow down and find spaces for repairing, providing reparations, and reviving arrangements ungoverned by imperial logics of optimization. And so one of her methods, at least in this book, is something she calls rehearsal. Not the frenetic pursuit of the new, but the practice of stepping back, quote, slowing down, and relating to actions classified as outdated and impracticable as concrete common options. And to me, thinking about all of those things that AI wants to do away with, so the boring, the tedious, laziness, all the things that make us human, are really, in a way, in all of these futuring AI or imagining AI for a future, really sort of eliminated. They're seen as outdated human traits and experiences that are not worth preserving, which I find really interesting. So that is what that is one of the things that I mean with presenting AI. So refusing this master narrative that treats automation as inevitable progress, and instead sort of rehearsing disengagements from AI's temporal politics, which means sort of try to reactivate different kinds of stories about, as you will soon hear, about clunkiness, what I call the crack, and the chill. And these figures that I will come back to in the second half of my talk, they're not meant as sort of like these romanticized views on the past or nostalgic figures, so to speak, but viable ways of being that resist the slicing of time into a disposable past and then an optimized future. Presenting AI with Asulai asks us to be more mindful of just saying no thank you, to what is offered as sort of these promising, shiny, frictionless avenues. So this means, to me at least, and I'm sure the stories that you want to tell are different, and maybe you want to highlight something else. But instead of stories about taking time, instead of stories about saving time, I want to celebrate stories about taking time. Instead of stories about perfection, we should maybe think more about incompleteness, and stories about hesitation, not certainty. And I think this is just this is a non-exhaustive list, of course. And I'd love to hear what kind of stories that you would center if you had a project like this. So reactivating these stories also means reckoning with what we're losing. This is where I'm also very inspired by Vanessa Machado de Oliveira's not most recent book, but one that really introduced me to her scholarship, Hospicing Modernity. So if Asulai urges us to resist closure, Machado teaches us to tend to what is ending, to recognize that we, or as we transition into something seamless, to futures of seamless automation, we risk letting distinctly human experiences die in silence. And this might sound a bit fatalistic or a bit dire, but But death and dying and endings in indigenous ontologies and scholarship is not something to be afraid of or shy away from, but it's just a natural, of course, part of what we call life. And so we're so accustomed to thinking about progress and a better life and better future, and that we have a tendency to forget about also caring for all the things that are coming to an end, whether it's a breakup or whether it's about actual people dying or the planet dying. How do we hospice the things that we want to do away with? So applied to AI, for me, this also means what dies when we go fully automated. Which parts of our daily lives get optimized away? And are we really prepared to let these elements vanish without a thought or without attending that they're deserving of? And so for Mercado, it's really about a practice of careful disinvestment, staying present with loss, witnessing what is no longer valued by AI's metrics, and refusing to simply discard the messy, relational, embodied work that makes us all human. And so for a way of theorizing what it means to think more about the present, her ethic asks not that we undo change, so it's not about rejecting technology, but that we actually pause, that we take a break, and that we actually think about whether we are willing to discard the things that, you know, might be ugly or might make us uncomfortable, or we think, well, why should we preserve boringness? Or isn't laziness, something that makes us go to the psychologist and make us feel bad, especially as students? Like, am I allowed to be lazy? I should be so productive. I should be doing this and that. And we're so accustomed to all of these, experiences of perfection that maybe it's also easy for us to think that it would be okay to do away with what the Sian and Nagai would call ugly feelings, or the things that make us uncomfortable. So with Mercado, it's really, for me, about thinking about alternative presence, or how we really relate to the here and now. And I will be doing that now in the next part of the talk by introducing 3 figures to think with. So I did warn you, it's very theoretical and conceptual. But each of the figures that I'm presenting suggests the way to stay present with the human experience that visions and imaginaries of AI efficiency tend to erase. And the first one is what I call the clunky, which represents the awkward, effortful moments when we struggle with a task. By now, I'm sure we all have the experiences of using ChatGPT, or what you maybe call communicative AI, to solve tasks, to demand instant answers, to, you know, draft a hard email or, God forbid, a student essay, or anything that, you know, previously maybe we just had to like make an effort, we had to think, but it's so easy to when you cannot really find the right words, that you outsource this way of drafting words, drafting sentences. But the clunky is really this experience of, you know, going to using Word or going to an email, writing, and then erasing, and like, why am I constantly so, you know, why do I sound angry whenever I write this email, or I didn't find the right words to really tell this person that I'm sorry, or spending time just figuring something out, which is actually really clunky, cumbersome experience of just like actually spending some time. Yeah, so I think we need to just celebrate actually the struggle, and really think about whether we are willing to let go of thinking, writing, thinking. Are we prepared to lose the experience of getting lost with words? We're maybe with Google Maps very much accustomed to not getting lost in the physical sense when we try to navigate. But in a way, this is not hugely different. This is about getting lost in actually knowing what to say, or not allowing ourselves to get lost anymore. And to think with the clunky, I have a companion figure of the walker, speaking of not getting lost in physical space. So Michel de Certeau, he has a figure called the walker, that I think maybe not, maybe you disagree, but could maybe act as a sort of like a companion piece, a companion figure. And the walker doesn't follow the strategic grid of city planners designed for maximum efficiency. Instead, the walker drifts, takes shortcuts, creates sort of accidental detours, has an ability to walk in a different way than suggested. So in other words, meaning often arises in the detours. We need the detours. We need the ability to see and act on detours, not just the destination. And so I think clunkiness for me really comes with this temporal resistance, a refusal of the rush to immediate answers, and a way of staying grounded in the present. It reminds us what it feels like to be unprepared, or indecisive. Right? So I was thinking about this in terms of like making this talk. Am I even like this feeling of being unprepared gets a different kind of like flavor when I know that my potential unpreparedness always has an assistant. Like potentially I could get out of my unpreparedness in a very easy way. And maybe it makes me more comfortable, maybe it saves time, maybe it made me actually be able to go to the Christmas market. But the more I do these things, the more you do these things, are we maybe at risk of losing this ability to detour? In the world of AI, the clunky is a call to preserve those messy human processes the hesitation, the rewrite, the awkward error. And so for me, it would be about remembering why we might not want to hand off every task to an AI. So staying with the clunkiness means refusing seamlessness as a default. So while the clunky is about, it sounds like I'm really romanticizing a struggle. Maybe I am, for the sake of it. So if it's about, if the clunky is about an active sense of struggling with something, with a task, the crack is about openness and vulnerability, the space for uncertainty. Again, it's also about this uncertainty about finding, for instance, the right words, or even just saying, actually, I'm not sure. Like, I actually don't know. And I refuse to go to ChatGPT for an answer. So these cracks of uncertainty are exactly where real connections can emerge. AI often promises to eliminate any sense of doubt, any sense of like not being sure about things, to smooth over things. But that really flattens everything, flattens human connection, flattens our ability to communicate. And so here I'm really inspired by this book by Stefano Harney and Fred Moten. Maybe some of you are more familiar with their work on the undercommons. But I also really suggest and can recommend this book, All Incomplete. So they argue that incompleteness is generative. So the cracks, the breaks, and interruptions in life aren't failures. They're invitations. So a cracked pot isn't useless. It's a space that invites something new. Likewise, when we leave our speech and thoughts incomplete, when we stop short of finishing every sentence, we invite collaboration and human connection. So here, it would also be thinking along the line of a jazz musician, jazz improvisations or improvisations at all, leaving room for a surprising riff, to hand over the openness and the pauses and whatever is to come to collaborator, to the jam session, and to just ask someone else to take a turn without laying necessarily all the perfect groundwork for that. Generative AI, by contrast, aims to complete patterns and deliver a neat output. But arguably, whatever makes us human or human creativity is not about completeness. It's the opposite. It's really about sort of finding whatever remains open to interpretation, open to thought, open to surprise, so that there can be anything called unexpected interruptions. And to theorize this further, I'm also inspired by this book by Saadia Hartman, and she has this notion of the wayward, and I think it might be a good companion figure for the crack. For Hartman, waywardness is, quote, a practice of possibility when most roads are foreclosed. The refusal to be legible, predictable, and captured. So the wayward, quote, claims the right to opacity, This is also something that Edouard Glissant writes very beautifully about. The right not to be known, to strike, to riot, to refuse, as she writes. And crucially also for me, and to theorize presenting AI, her notion of waywardness also means to love what is not loved, to care for what the world deems disposable, worthless, and unmarketable. And so in the context of AI, this, I think, really matters deeply because it's all about metrics and markability. Optimization demands legibility, subjects who behave predictably, whose desire can be modeled. And so waywardness is really this crack in that logic, unpredictability as freedom, movement that cannot be routed or anticipated. It's the social otherwise, also an improvisation with the terms of existence when those terms have already been dictated. And so presenting AI through waywardness means tending to what AI does not care for, the things deemed unoptimizable and so on. It means insisting on the right to love what is not loved, to practice insurgent, quote, ground that enables new possibility beyond algorithmic capture. So the crack and waywardness reminds us, don't rush to seal every opening. And so lastly, I get to what I call the chill. So the clunky and the crack, they keep us present amid effort and uncertainty. And the third figure, the chill, is about the conscious choice to slow down and to embrace silence, to create breathing space on purpose. And so as I was thinking which companion figure also lets me think about the chill, I thought about the idiot, and I've written about the idiot before, so have many others. And here the idiot is used in a positive sense. And one of the people who has written or used this figure most prominently is Isabel Stengers. And so the idiot isn't stupid. And of course, it also is the figure from Dostoevsky's novel. But it's not about stupidity. It's not a figure that doesn't know, although this figure is often marked as a person who doesn't know. But it's the one who slows things down, who takes time, who doesn't feel the rush to claim their authority. It's like another figure that I recently wrote about, Bartleby, Melville's figure, who famously said, "I prefer not to." The idiot's answer is an insistence on another priority. So the chill is the person who might ask, wait, do I really want to say those 26 minutes? Do I really want to say those 11 minutes? Or whatever else the headlines about saving time and using AI promises us. And speaking of time, I've lost my time, so you have to cut me off if I should. Yeah, 5 minutes. Yeah. So again, this idea of the chill, of the idiot, of taking time, of slowing things down is also not a new thing. The Luddites of the early Industrial Revolution, they were often caricatured as anti-technological or anti-technology, machine breakers. but they were also really fighting for time, time to think, to negotiate and decide. They often met in taverns, wrote letters, and organized with care. So it wasn't necessarily about vandalism or necessarily the reason for crushing them down, but also refusal, I think, to be swept along. That sort of already from the get-go threatened the capitalist logic of speed and productivity. So maybe we can say that the Luddites, they decided to chill. So to chill is a political act. It really says this urgency is manufactured. I choose a different pace. So it's about actually protecting time or thinking about boredom, rest, even laziness. And to think about reclamation of downtime, of dead time, of unproductive time. And to also think, as I do in another research project of mine on the democracy of silence, that we actually also need to protect democracy from maybe an overemphasis on the logocentric and the speech, and also maybe finding the pockets of hesitation and, of course, listening, as many also argue, but to think more about the generative potential of the things that we usually think about as non-democratic. What would it actually mean to chill collectively in the face of AI acceleration? Instead of endless meetings and instant replies, we might insist on careful deliberation and choosing the human path of struggle over mere speed, of silence over constant output. So this is my last slide, and I really cannot explain why. I just found it on Google Image. And I really can't remember what I searched for, but maybe these are the three figures. Maybe. The clunky, the crack, the chill, paired with these conceptual personas. And I really use the conceptual persona in the Deleuze and Guattari sense as sort of a philosophical thinking device. Paired with the walker, the wayward, and the idiot, that really embody these different values that I think, that I hope, at least for me, are really still very, very much valuable, and that I don't mean to sort of like say or romanticize the past and think that we should, all be bored or something like that. But that we should really think about whether we risk losing something that is embedded and encoded in the human experience of being bored. And so if media and communication research needs to engage emergence rather than just consequence, then I'm interested in this question of what emergence do to our methodological choices. So if we study AI only through the lens of efficiency and through the things that AI discourse and imaginaries tell us is important, we also end up performing a future where speed is king by default. And so to me, thinking about these strange puppets here is also sort of like a way of performing a different present, one where all of these other values actually become a way of, or they assert their own agency. So it's a way of also engaging with the question of which future will we choose, by the way in which we actually live in the present. And with Mercado, be very, very mindful about, at least if we are willing to let loose of all of the things that we're told in the name of productivity, then at least work on offering the kind of care as these things might be dying. And really think about now, at this point in time, what is it that we're actually, what do we want to preserve? In the future, it might be too late, right? So this is the time where we can actually intervene and study and think about AI, not necessarily as having anything to do with the technology, but also actually recenter AI discourse in human and non-human experiences. Thank you.